If I am going to be away from these children, I want it to be for something more than just selling my time for money, because my time is worth more than. She talked about happiness and that happiness was a success measure, or that happiness should be something that we aspire to. And there was like a relief to hear someone else who was a lawyer and successful say that happiness mattered. If everything that you touch every day, everything that's measured is pushing towards one agenda, how are you ever going to?
Every significant project begins with a decision to think differently, to challenge what already exists, to open a door that others may have walked past. The construction industry has always been built on solving complex engineering problems, yet many of its greatest challenges are not technical at all. They are human, they are commercial, they are shaped by the systems, contracts, and behaviours that determine how people work together long before the first piece of earth is turned. The way we allocate risk influences trust. The way we procure projects influences collaboration. The way we write contracts influences the decisions people make every single day. In many ways, our systems become the psychology of our projects. After more than 2 decades in construction law, Janelle Kerrisk recognised that too many legal services were built around responding to conflict after relationships had already broken down. Leaving an equity partnership to establish Helix Legal was more than starting a new business. It was a decision to redesign the way legal services support the construction industry, shifting the focus from litigation to prevention, from hierarchy to collaboration, and from legal process to commercial outcomes. By bringing together legal expertise, technology, and industry insight, Janelle has created a model that doesn't simply solve disputes. It challenges and changes the conditions that often create them in the first place. In this episode of Building Doors, we explore how leadership innovation and business design can reshape an entire profession. And we discuss why changing systems changes behaviour, why it's more powerful than reaction, and why building better projects ultimately begins with building better relationships.
Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
I've had so many people recommend you as a guest, which is high praise for you.
Oh, that's so lovely to hear.
Yeah, and I'd been keen to get you on, and doing the research was so much fun, just learning about everything you've achieved in your business and the ethos behind it. But I always like to ask where it all started, because I like to understand why people choose the careers they do and the paths that they take. So tell me.
Funny that with your background.
Oh, yeah. Who would have thought?
Well, I had never heard of construction law at all at university. I grew up in Townsville and I went to JCU, had a beautiful little posse of friends that I graduated with from law. We did a little entourage of cars. There was two carloads of people. We all moved to Brisbane after we finished at university, and we did the legal prac course here in Brisbane. And the firm that I randomly got placed with for the placement for legal prac was a construction boutique law firm.
Yeah.
And it turned out it was everything that I loved at university. It was all about equity. It was all about contracts. And I could really get behind it. You know, you promised that you'd build this for me for this price and you haven't done it. So therefore we've got an issue. Or it was an area that I felt really confident and happy advocating in. So it all started there. So I built the foundation of my experience there. Being at a smaller boutique practice, I got so much hands-on opportunity doing my own advocacy, you know, instructing counsel. I had a little Daihatsu Syrian back in those days. And she used to go like the wind down the highway to go to the Gold Coast, where I used to give free legal advice to master builder members for a whole day. And so, you know, that was like in the ocean, swim as hard as you can, really early on in my career, which really shaped my confidence and my capabilities to lead me to where I am today. So I always really value that hands-on experience that I got early in my career. From there, I went to a larger firm, a national firm, and was very, very eager to make partnership as quickly as possible. I worked my way through, the rungs of the corporate ladder at the big firm and found myself in partnership at 30. So at the time, I was the youngest partner that they had appointed, and I was the first girl around the table for the Queensland office, which was exciting. Yeah. And then from there, I spent, a good decade at the bigger firm. So there was 52 other partners. And in 2016, I started Helix, which is where I am now. And we are coming up to our 10th birthday, actually.
Know. That's so exciting.
Yeah, so having a big party in our lane at Bakery Lane for the birthday. I really feel like, these milestones, come along and you need to make sure you celebrate and take stock of how far you've come. So it's been quite the journey. These days, I kind of don't really fancy myself as a traditional, what you would think as a lawyer. I do a lot more broad work now, but then also, as you would know, spend a lot of time running the business as well. We're a lot bigger than what we were when we started, and there's 3 different companies in the group that I oversee. So it's a busy, busy time.
Yeah. So what I'm interested in is one of the things you mentioned just then early on, which I think is a good insight for people, and it's a question I sometimes get asked, right? You mentioned you built that confidence and you had the confidence to then obviously make partner at 30. Where did that confidence come from for you? Did you always have it? Did you build it up over time? I think it's helpful for young women especially to understand how to build the confidence that they often need in these kind of environments.
I think it came, in my school days and from my family. My family was always really supportive and encouraging of anything that I was going to sign myself up to do. I never really thought of myself as an extrovert or, someone who puts himself out there. And I think even today with the number of things that I speak at, the work that I've done in court, everything that I've experienced across my career, there's still always that little bit of doubt, no matter how old you get, no matter how experienced you are. So I think it's a constant talking to yourself and a constant encouraging yourself to keep going and push yourself outside of what you think that you're capable of. There's lots of weird and wonderful things that I've done across my time to try to build confidence. So, things like public speaking at conferences and events, putting myself in rooms that, the inside of me would think I would have no business being in. I spent some time as the president of the National Association of Women in Construction. I used to run their events every month as well, the awards committee, putting myself in rooms and opportunities, giving myself opportunities to find my voice and to speak up. I've done other weird and wonderful things like doing a TEDx talk before TEDx was even a thing. So back in
awesome.
like 2010, I did a TED talk on raising your daughter to lead, and it's probably the most scared of any speaking engagement ever. And it was, it was a long time ago, and the idea that me speaking was going to stay on the internet for the rest of eternity just freaked me out.
Oh my gosh, you've just made me realize that.
Something chronic back then. It was a thing back then. Now, everyone's everywhere on the internet. So did that, and then I did a comedy course at the Paddo Tavern at one stage as well.
That's awesome.
I know, just as I was coming up to be made partner, we used to have to do these breakfast seminars, and there'd be like 100 people come, and you'd have to, explain this new area of law. And I'd always watch this particular partner who I worked with, who was very, very good at public speaking. As I moved up in my career, watched him be really, really good at it and knew that it was going to be my turn and I was going to have to stand up and do it. So the comedy course, first off, surprisingly, allowed me to spend time outside of my usual circles. There was a group of really funny guys that were doing the course as well who actually were funny, weren't just a nerd like me trying to get better at public speaking. And so getting to spend Thursday nights with them, trying to write jokes and listening to their jokes was just like the greatest break from the intensity of the work that I was doing at the time with trying to make partner and being really on the cusp of it and, you know, the intensity that existed in my life. And then at the culmination of it, I invited friends and family. There was 200 people in the room at the Paddo Tavern, and I got up and told, like, really, I can't even tell you how terrible jokes, terrible. But now every time I get to go up, and I've spoken in rooms with way more people in them, now every time I get up, you know, and you're behind the curtain and you're going to come out, I always think, oh God, no matter what happens here, it can never be as bad as that night at the Paddo Tavern where I stood up and tried to tell jokes. So it's really helped with the confidence to do just entirely ridiculous things. And then that inner voice inside you that says you can't do it. And you say, well, you know, you got up and told jokes at the Paddo. It's not going to be as bad as that. Get your ass out there.
Do you know what I think's really interesting is you hit the nail on the head is something that I think a lot of people don't realize is that you can build confidence outside of work in other areas. And in fact, it can be so powerful
it's the
because
best place to do it.
Once you realize you can achieve things out of the work environment that are really big things that you didn't think you could achieve, it builds your confidence at work. And I think so often we think, oh, if I get more and more competent at my role, I will just get more confident. And I don't always feel that's necessarily the way because, yes, you will get more competent, but that doesn't mean that you feel internally confident. And as you said, you're still going to have those doubts as well. So I think that's a really good
Because I think there's a difference too between knowing the content. Like I've always been very prepared. You know, if we're going to court, I've got all my exhibits ready to go. There would never be a lawyer on the other side of the table that's more prepared than I am because of the commitment that I have to that. So that can give you confidence knowing that your stuff's in order.
Yep.
You know the case, you know the area of law that you're talking about. And same with giving a speech. I know the content. I know what's going on here. But knowing the content and feeling confident about what you're speaking about is a small element of the confidence because there's a whole other head game that goes on with everybody that no matter how well you know the content or how confident you feel there, you really need to make that side of you be quiet or have some strategy for hushing that voice inside you that says you've got no business there or that you can't do this.
Yeah. So I would hope that people listening to this episode are signing up to the Paddo for some comedy.
It was good fun.
Yeah, I reckon it sounds great fun. It would be fantastic. And I think it is those external opportunities that do build, it also builds you balance outside of work as well to understand that, yes, work is part of you, but there are other parts of you as well, like a comedian.
Very, very bad comedian. I can't stress to you how terrible it was. My husband has video of it and I'm like, please destroy it. Yeah, he threatens all the time. Nobody is ever going to see that.
So the other question, one of the things I was thinking about as you were talking about, founding your business and because it's really interesting to make partner. You know, sometimes you have this big goal, you make it, and then you're like, you know what? I'm going to found my own business. So tell me more about that journey, almost like an awakening for you as well.
Yeah, I think if I had been a bit older, maybe I wouldn't have done it. I think I was just old enough and just at the cusp of the next chapter of life enough to think that it was possible. So I had made equity partner, was running a really solid, profitable practice within the business, really loved the people that I worked with and my team. Part of my journey had been the very first law firm that I ever worked in. I worked with a person called Dana Gilbert, who is now the COO of Helix. So she started with me when I was very green, my first job in law. Yeah. We worked together. And then when I moved to Holding Redlich, she moved with me and she was a big part of helping me make partner there. We set up clients and frameworks and systems and recruited people and she was a huge part of the success there. And then she's helped me build Helix over the last 10 years. And we always joke that we've been in a relationship with each other longer than we've been with our husbands. And I don't know how she puts up with me, but our friendship has built the most amazing business and changed the lives of the people that have worked within our business. And I'm so eternally proud of that. You know, moving from a large firm into Helix, I did that at the time with 1-year-old twins.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which is a little bit insane as well.
It's okay. I found a Karan & Co with a 3-month-old.
Yeah,
equally crazy.
We are so aligned on so many levels. All the crazy things. Yeah. And so, you know, that was a really, really big decision to make. And I think I got to the stage with the bigger partnership where the change that I thought was necessary or the ideas that I had for change reached a push point, you know, that it's really hard to bring 52 other people along for the ride. And to some extent, I could be the master of my own ship within my group and do my thing, but there was the infrastructure of major law firms makes it really a challenge to innovate, and that's no shade. There's so many amazing humans. There's so many people within Helix who I worked with previously at big firms. They're full of amazing humans. They are really clever, but I think the infrastructure and the systems on how law firms operate is over time evolved to stifle innovation and to stifle the beautiful personalities of the people that work within the businesses. That, you know, them doing interesting things outside of work makes them better at their jobs, and, you know, building an infrastructure that allows a better collaboration with clients or provides price transparency and certainty, because it's not about saving money. It's about knowing what you're up against. If you're a board trying to make a decision about whether you're going to enter into a contract or you're a superannuation fund looking at what your next property investment is going to be, looking at those things through a lens of transparency and understanding what you're up for with the consultants or with the legal people that you engage with, I think empowers better decisions and empowers better outcomes. And so, you know, there's a lot of the way that the infrastructure and systems are set up that makes it difficult on the humans and difficult on the client. So I really wanted to do something different for the lawyers, because to getting to equity partnership and looking back, there was a lot of fun with the people. But, you know, if I looked at the young girls particularly working for me and thought, do I want them to go that same journey that I've been on? I probably didn't. And so being able to be happy and engaged and have other interests and still progress in your career, you know, make money. I'm not against commercial advancement. Helix is not a not-for-profit. It's definitely got commercial objectives. And, you know, this year in our 10th year, we smashed every commercial objective that we had for the business, every goal that we
done.
Thank
well
you.
done. Not easy.
At the end of the financial year. So the business is in the strongest position that it's ever been in over the last 10 years. The people are amazing. The clients that we work with, I'm really proud to stand beside. So I think it's that innovation and looking to do things differently and putting humans at the center that's really allowed us to achieve that success, and that opportunity that if there's an idea or if there's change that we think that we're able to implement that really quickly. And I think that's what the kind of new law movement that started 10 years ago, I think that's really what that's about, trying to do things differently. That's a better outcome for project and also a better outcome for the humans who are part of that project, be that the lawyers, the PMs, the engineers, the CAs, whatever we're talking about.
Do you think there's a certain So one of the things I've been fascinated by and thinking about, especially as we look at this infrastructure pipeline, is the psychology behind systems and how systems often enable certain behaviours. And you kind of touched on it going back there as well. Things like transparency in pricing, transparency in the work you're doing, those sort of things. It's almost like organisations now need to evolve to think about, do the systems and the way that we behave as a business align with our values? Like if you've got that on the wall, what systems do you have that then drive those behaviours that you want for your clients? So I'm interested to unpack that a bit with you. Tell me about your systems and how you design that with the human in mind.
See, I could not agree with that more. And I think it's about language, it's about systems, it's about what I called the infrastructure. You know, if everything that you touch every day, everything that's measured is pushing towards one agenda, how are you ever going to go in the other direction? And so I have an interest in, you know, the psychology of how people interact with one another. Part of the degree that I did back in the day was sociology as well, and that whole thing of like, why do certain groups of people join together? And I think then having twins really blew my mind too, because not by design, but just the way that has happened. They've spent every single day of their lives together doing the same activities, you know, with the same parents, but they are such different people, and that's been the case since they were a baby. And that whole thing of, you know, are you born a certain way, or is it your environment?
Nature versus nurture, the debate of all time.
And then why do certain people, you know, come together, and all of that really interests me. So from the very beginning, we had to be really purposeful about the decisions that we made to establish the infrastructure. For example, back then, it blew people's mind to think that you might store legal documents in the cloud, which sounds insane now because everything is in the cloud. But it was really difficult to locate a provider who was going to allow us to be able to have flexibility and work from anywhere. So in the beginning, the options involved having to have an on-site server, which meant that we had to have a lease, which meant we needed to have a certain square meterage to be able to fit the server on there. You know, all these things that one decision had so many consequences for the infrastructure or the systems that we were able to establish. And so I found myself having to advocate to these suppliers who were like, you know, you're insane, you can't do that. And so ultimately we found a supplier, and now it's highly successful business over the last 10 years. I can't tell you how that business has grown tenfold too in the time that we've been clients, because the world has changed. But that one decision had so many consequences that we had to renege on that. I think the very first big case that we had was in international arbitration, which meant in September of 2016 we started. By that Christmas, we were in the UK and Germany meeting with witnesses in that matter. And if we had rent back in Brisbane and a system that meant that we needed to be, you know, hardwired in, we would never have been able to take on that opportunity and ultimately run the business from overseas over that period of time. And then even today, that decision has consequences for the ability for me to give flexibility to the people that work within Helix. So at Helix, flexibility is something that occurs immediately. It's not something that you have to apply for some flexible work arrangement, but involves a level of transparency and trust to be able to make that work. So the level of collaboration that we have with one another and the accountability that we have to one another means that the flexibility works. And if you don't have that built in, and you don't have the systems that allow that collaboration across, you know, Newcastle, Townsville, Cairns, Gold Coast, Ipswich, Brisbane, all the Helix people are spread. David's in the UK at the moment, so he's operating out from the UK for the work that he's doing, and the systems and the infrastructure that we built allows that to happen. So that's just one thing. That's a decision that we made early on that even 10 years on is having consequences for the humans that work within the business.
And one of the things I find really interesting that I query sometimes when people say it to me is, oh, I don't trust them yet. I need to, I'll give flexibility when I trust them. And I find that a really interesting thing because in businesses, when you have hybrid or remote or flexibility, often if you have the right systems in place, there's that level of trust and respect because you hired them for a reason, right? But secondly, the systems can also drive transparency. If you have systems where everybody can collaborate, jump in, see what's being done and also clear deliverables as a team, then you're not relying on trusting that Joe Blob over there is doing their job because you see it. I think that the shift that we're seeing right now is really interesting in the workplace because post-COVID, a lot of people, I want people back in the office for collaboration. And I see the point in that side of things from having that connection. But then also organisations are talking about making that intentional and saying, well, we offer hybrid work. One of my government clients says we offer hybrid work and we have certain days that we like the team to come together. So it's becoming very intentional. And it's really divided. You've got some people that are going, yeah, we'll do it and we can make it work. And you've got others that are just like, we are an office-based business.
I think it's really hard, again, coming back to systems and infrastructure. If you've got systems and infrastructure that support best outcomes in physical space, everyone together, of course, you're going to get better outcomes and the remote thing isn't going to work. But, we've got the capacity to collaborate in documents. And I guess over COVID, people got a taste of it. But before that, we were set up like that intentionally. So over COVID, the main person that I was working with was on the Gold Coast and we'd have the Teams chat on, talking about the submissions that we were putting together. We'd be in the same document together, be like, okay, you go down to the liquidated damages section. I'll stay up in the intro, let me know when you're finished and I'll have a read. We'd get off the Teams call, work on it a bit, be able to collaborate within the document and then also talk face-to-face over the Teams. There's ways to achieve that connection and collaboration across technology now that creates opportunities that we never had before. But if your business isn't set up like that or you haven't had the opportunity or you haven't taken the time to build the culture and the trust across your team, well, then I can see how it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I also, think that I've come to appreciate that I'm in a position where I know everybody in my business very well and that's intentional, the size that we are. I've got no aspirations of having floors and floors of humans within Helix. I like that.
Yeah.
I know and trust everybody and I like that they all know and trust each other. And I think that in a smaller environment like I have, that's easier to achieve rather than in a large corporate environment. I can see how it could be quite difficult and how approaches and culture and decisions that are made can even change across different teams when you're in a larger environment. But I think even back in the days where I was existing in a larger corporate environment, there's still decisions as a leader that you can make within your team that can still make a difference. Can remember, back in 2014, Laura Chong in my group had started a corporate fashion business called the 400 Co back then. And she started in my team working 3 days a week as a lawyer because the other days she was running her fashion business. And back then, that was thought of to be mind-blowing that someone could choose to be a lawyer and then also pursue the development of a company like that. It was mind-blowing at that time. But at Helix, I really encourage people to explore what's going to make them excited to be humans. And I hope that for the lawyers, being a lawyer at Helix makes them excited. But then also, whatever other interests they have, flexibility isn't just about the person who needs to go and pick their child up from school. It's about so much more than that.
It is.
Dana, who is insane, and this is not my idea of a holiday at all, but did the Dopey Challenge where you go
What's that?
You go to Disneyland, and she did 5 kilometers one day, 10 kilometers the next day, a half marathon, and then a full marathon.
Wow.
Yeah, insane. And so you can't not train for that. You can't just show up and do that. And so, everyone in the business was behind her achieving that goal. It was a bucket list thing that she wanted to do. So, when she needed to go train, or she was leaving early to run, or she was starting late because she'd been to training, she's still working way more hours than what her prescribed hours were, but that flexibility allowed her to achieve that goal in her life and do those things. But if there's an expectation that you're only good at your job if you're at your desk from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., how are you ever going to achieve the other things in your life that are going to make you feel fulfilled or make you feel like, the time that you've spent here on earth has been worthwhile?
One of the things and the reality is the more open-minded we can become about what is possible with the right systems and with the right infrastructure and shaping our business to be able to, I see it as well from a attraction and retention point of view. Why would you limit yourself to a certain pool of the workforce if you are able to move the systems around? We have so many varied things, marathons. I've met someone that's a PT. I had somebody else caring for elderly parents, young children. Yes, as part of it. Dads with young children wanting to coach soccer team. Like there's so flexibility. I agree. And the more I'm hearing the conversations now, and I think it also stems from the systems and the role design. How do you design the roles so that you're not, discounting people or discounting potential? Because look at the way that your business has flourished because you've allowed people to be humans and to do things outside of work that then, as you would have seen, enrich their performance at work as well.
Absolutely.
So what I want to now, I guess, pull together, which I'm really interested in, is how does your business help the construction sector as well? We've got a massive pipeline coming to deliver and, quietly freaking out. We definitely, I think that there are ways that we're going to have to think differently, especially because we're going to have pressure on multiple different areas of the sector. Energy's busy too, and you've got infrastructure, transport. We're still trying to build all this residential. So we've got this perfect storm of everything busy at the same time. I'm interested to find out from you around how is Helix and how are you, looking to help and equip these businesses? What are some of the things that you're seeing they're going to be a challenge where you're going to be stepping in?
I think the traditional kind of adversarial approach or, really aggressive contracts or, the old way of doing things is going to make it really difficult to deliver the level of work that needs to be delivered over the next 10 years. And so I think it's a real opportunity for businesses like Helix, and we exist across Helix Legal, which, makes sense. That's the origin story of where we started. There's Helix Compliance, which is really about due diligence in the construction industry, knowing well who you're doing business with. And then Helix Impact, which is about if we're going to be building all these things, if we're going to be spending the money anyway, how do we leave a legacy or how do we make an impact with the money that we're spending? And so I think that in-house capacity across a whole solution makes us different in the market. And I think businesses will be looking more for efficiency, ease of doing business. When the outcome is about how do we actually get a successful project delivered, that's where we can come in and assist with the solution, and it's a whole solution. So I think that capacity for innovation, the capacity for having some transparency and certainty around what things are going to cost. Sometimes feel like the ideas in the industry are, the lawyer is going to blow things up or the lawyer is going to make it worse, or if we bring a lawyer in, it's going to cause more heartache to the project than it is help. And I really hope and we go a long way towards trying to change that reputation for the involvement that Helix might have in a project. And even on the dispute side of things, nobody really wants to ever be in a dispute. And I've never had a client that said, oh, that was great. Thanks very much. I really enjoyed that litigation and spending hours and hours with you to draft that affidavit. But I have had clients say, I would have preferred to avoid the dispute, but where we are now as a business and the difference that you standing beside us during that period has made for the business, because we try to not just kind of bat back the dispute, but also look at, well, why did the dispute happen and what can we do to make a difference in this business so this doesn't happen to them again, or that the risk profile that they've been accepting all this time, that they understand that there's capacity for them to negotiate on that and that they can change their systems and processes to get better so that their ability to operate in the market is improved and changed. Yeah.
One of the things I also want to ask is, because you've run a successful business, and I think there is an interesting thing that I want to raise that I haven't probably raised before, but I'd love to talk to you about. When we look at people starting businesses, and because you started a business with young children, as did I, a lot of what is put out there is a hustle culture. You work long hours, you don't see your family, which I think often puts off people that are caregivers, and that can be women and men. It can put people off and kind of going, oh, I don't know if I want to sacrifice my life for the business. I'm interested to understand from your perspective, was that something that you ever thought about, or what was your experience now having built a business around the juggle? Because I'm interested to see and almost maybe even challenge some of those conceptions people have.
I think part of the motivation to start Helix too was, I don't know, I've probably always been a pretty intense kind of person. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it well, and I'm going to give it everything that I've got. Like even back in high school days, my girlfriends were out playing pool with the boys and I was at my desk studying. I've just always had that in me to, try harder than everybody else.
Yeah.
And so throughout my career, I'd always been that person that, would stay back late, or that was going to try harder, or was going to make sure the deadline was met. And so I can't change that about myself, and it's part of who I am. It's part of what makes me good at my job. Also care very deeply about people and about my own reputation. And so knowing that all of that was inside of me, I knew that I was going to be intense for the rest of my career. And so coming back from maternity leave and starting back in the business, it was like, if I am going to be away from these children, I want it to be for something more than just selling my time for money, because my time is worth more than whatever money that you could possibly pay me. And I want the hours that I have in the day to count for more. And if there's hours that I'm going to spend away from the children, I want it to be hours that I'm proud to have spent, and that they can be proud of me for the time that I've spent as well. I think my dad died quite young. So he had cancer. He saw me get admitted, but then he passed away. So I've just always kind of had it in my head that, you've only got so much time. And I think early in my career, it was like, okay, well, push hard, achieve quickly, be partner by 30, because time's ticking. And then with Helix, like I had this realization that, yes, time's ticking, but what's the point of like rushing through and ticking the boxes off if you're not happy? And I think I met this lawyer called Clarissa Raywood, and she does this Happy Lawyer, Happy Life podcast now, but this was before she even had that podcast. And she did a podcast interview with a company called Dent. And I listened to her. It was like the June, I think I may have just resigned or was about to resign. And I was contemplating whether I'd actually lost my marbles that I was doing this. And I listened to her, and she talked about happiness, and that happiness was a success measure, or that happiness should be something that we aspire to. And there was like a relief to hear someone else who was a lawyer and successful say that happiness mattered. And I'd never had anyone before say that. And in fact, the opposite, like the more burnt out you were or the more busy you were, the more successful you were.
Mm-hmm.
And if you weren't busy, well, then there was something wrong with you because obviously, the busier, the better. And so, this idea that happiness could be at the center of everything was also a foundation of Helix and was a reason for the flexibility. And so I don't think that I could possibly have been there over the last 10 years of my kids' life in the way that I have if I was still at a bigger firm.
Mm-hmm.
The transparency and flexibility means that every morning my calendar is blocked out till 9:30 in the morning and nobody books meetings with me until after that. And I could possibly drop them earlier and, rush around and make earlier meetings, but I've designed my time because the mornings is actually the time that I get with the children. My husband goes to work early. He picks them up in the afternoon. So I don't want to be screaming all morning and, I want to spend time with them in the morning. And then being able to go to school events, they get awards at school, attending those things, even when they were in prep and primary school, seeing them dressed as shepherds and oh my God,
the nativity things,
just the most beautiful things. I just feel anyone who's had to miss out on those things, just that breaks my heart. And I don't think starting your own business means that you miss out on those things. And if you have an obsessive personality like mine, that's not going to change. And there's been times where Dana and I have been, writing proposals while the kids play with the dogs at her house, or in the early days, bathing the kids while we wrote pictures for work, and they have been involved with, there's photos of first and second birthdays of Helix where the boys would come in and we'd have cake and they'd sing happy birthday to Helix with us. And as much as I know every human that works in Helix, well, both my children could name, people that work in Helix and people that, there's a young lawyer that worked for me for years while she was at university and then into her early years as a lawyer. And now she's moved to Sydney and doing the big firm thing. But last time my family and I went to Sydney, we caught up with her and my children know and love her. We all went to the zoo together.
That's
and
so good.
Bought them little plushy toys at the end, got Emily one too. So, that kind of family work integration. Jackie Doyle, who is one of the directors at Helix, her kids and my kids, get along famously and we do things together. And I think early on in my career, because I was so young, I got told, you can't be friends with the people that you work with and you can't be friends with your clients. And I just think that's rubbish. I think the greatest success that's come from my career has been my collaboration with Dana, and she's my best friend. She's at the Sunshine Coast now and comes in and out of the Brisbane office, but we'll still talk on my way to work every morning. And sometimes it's about the friendship stuff and sometimes it's about the business stuff and sometimes it's about both. But that friendship and that collaboration has been the foundation of the success of Helix. And then Earl Tan, who's another director, he started out, I knew him as a research clerk at Holding Redlich, and that's when we first met. And sometimes we'd be working late on cases and we'd talk about what else there was to life and, what we could do besides be there at midnight at night. And now we run this amazing business together. And, I've known him since he was still fresh out of university. There's so many connections and relationships, the clients that we have. Michael Chesterman, who used to work with us, he was a client when he was at the QBCC. David Cahill, who now works within our business, he was the CFO of McNabb. I worked with him over a number of years and now he works with us. It's just so many wonderful people that I've encountered across my career that have helped me to make Helix a success, and those relationships have really sustained it as it's gone forward. And the children have been involved with that and part of that as well. So I think if you're out there listening and you're thinking of doing your own thing and you think that it is going to make things more difficult from a family perspective. I can say that my experience is that it certainly hasn't been that way. I've had the advantage of a wonderfully supportive husband, though, as well, which has been fantastic, and very much a partnership with the joint responsibility that we take for developing these beautiful young men that they're turning into.
Yeah, I can completely relate. I'm so glad you shared that because, I feel the same way about founding the business that, for us as well. Like I have had more time than I ever would have been able to with the kids. And, you only start to realize as they start to get older. Son told me this story about how I went to a multicultural day and he goes, Mum, I'll never forget the Turkish delight you brought. He's like, and he was, he would have been 4, maybe, like little, right? Like he's going to high school next year. And the funny thing is, I need to share with you, I bought it from a kebab shop.
That's amazing.
Cook. So I went to the kebab shop. I'm like, I need all of your Turkish delight. And he's like, really? I'm like, I'm going to a multicultural day and my husband's Turkish. That's all I can think of that is Turkish food. And so I told my son, and forever, but that's a memory of his and it's something funny that we share. And it's also kind of well known with my family. I'm not the best cook. Yeah. And then he goes, oh, Mum, that, when I told him, he's like, Mum, that rings true. He's like, oh, and I was like, it was good, wasn't it? Because I knew this kebab shop did this great Turkish delight. So I'm rushing in there, obviously juggling, juggling business life. And I don't have time to make all that Turkish delight and it would taste terrible. So you're not a cook either.
No, my husband does all the cooking, and my kids talk about my husband's cooking. Those when they do those things on Mother's Day and Father's Day and they have to stand up and say the things they love about their mum and dad. My kids are always hilarious because how our roles are very non-traditional within our family,
I just survive with the Thermomix. Like, I know I'm not giving them I am kind of giving them a plug, but that's the only way I can cook at least to a basic, edible level. Yeah. So look, with all of the work that you've been doing and look, it's just so lovely to hear your pride of the people that work with you as well as the clients and, the way you've designed your business, and it's refreshing and it's also really human-led. So I want to commend you on that as well because it shines through. I got emotional listening to you at one point and I was like, I can't cry on a podcast. Like just because it was just so beautiful, like just the way that you've built it and then the opportunities you're creating for others to have the same family.
Oh, that is the most rewarding bit. There's people that work in my business that one point coming off the back of that big case, it's probably, how they say the first year is fine and the second year is really difficult. The second year of business was so hard for me.
Tough, yeah.
Because that matter was so intense, I had witnesses in Germany. I'd be on, till 2:00 in the morning because I'd be on Aussie time and German time. And then at the end of it, because I'd done no BD, no marketing, I'd just been surviving. At the end of that trial, I was like, oh, crap, there's no business left. Holy no.
You're trying to work in it. And then,
and there was only like 3 of us at that point as well. And so there goes the cash flow, like whoops-a-daisy. And at that point, we hired 3 people at once. Like, again, crazy, seems like a crazy decision, but I knew and trusted the human side of things for those people so intensely that the commercial risk was, and that decision is still paying dividends to me today from like a human perspective, from the friendships, but also from the business perspective. Like one of those people, for example, when he started, he had a girlfriend, but over his time in Helix, he's got married, he's had children, he's bought a house. And that's the same for a lot of the people that have been with us a long time. The joy that I get from the commercial gain that's come from the business and the benefit that it's had for my family and the things that we've been able to do, but then looking at the families of everyone within my business, I'm so proud of all the achievements that they've been able to move through and the life stages they've moved through. And the money that they're using to do that is all money that's been created by this crazy idea that me and Dana started 10 years ago. It's really rewarding.
That's beautiful. I'm going to go into the rocket round now because, and I used to just have a standard format that I followed and then I got bored of it. So I just started asking random questions, but I always ask one at the end. That's a question I always just like to hear from people. What is a common misconception about lawyers that is wrong?
We blow up the profits on the job and just cause disruption.
Yeah. Second one is, when have you been underestimated and proved them wrong?
Oh, God, so many times. I think one that comes to mind is really early in my career. I was talking about doing the Master Builders free legal advice. I used to also do presentations for them, and I can remember the very first one that I ever did, and I was this little blonde thing walking up the front, and it was only middle-aged men that were in the audience back then. And them just looking very confused, like, who is this girl? Is she really the lawyer? And then getting like into the presentation and seeing them all paying attention, writing down the things that I was saying, and that kind of satisfaction that came from just that one moment of knowing that you'd won them over, and that, you know, the wisdom that I was imparting was something that was going to be of benefit to them. But there's over the last, 20 years of my career, I think that there's been a lot of circumstances. I think being in construction, being in law, there's been a lot of circumstances where at face value people might have underestimated what I was bringing to the table.
Another one I wanted to ask you is, what makes you feel like you're home?
I think the people around me, because home is a weird thing for me, because I've kind of made Helix home too. There's not a big differentiation in my mind between the home environment and the humans I have around me there. Like, I feel supported and loved in my home environment, but I also feel that within my business too, which is wonderful.
Yeah, that's special. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I got caught up when you were talking about it. Got caught up thinking about it because it's just such a great story. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey as well. I hope that people, share this episode with someone that might be thinking of starting their own business as well, because it's really nice to hear different versions of what that can look like and different versions of what a business can look like holistically with families and career and life in general. So thank you so much for coming on as a guest.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me. It was a wonderful chat.
Thank you.
If this episode gave you new insights, don't let them go to waste. Take action. Apply them. And if you want more insider strategies from the best in construction and infrastructure, make sure to subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the leaders who open the most doors aren't waiting for opportunities, they're building them.